Okay, let's talk about prayer. Have you ever felt like it should be this huge, life-changing thing, but, well, in your day-to-day life, it just feels more like a last resort? Today, we're going to dig into a totally different way to think about prayer. We're going to look back at a group of people who seem to have cracked the code on its real power. I mean, just think about your week. Your to-do list is probably a mile long. You're juggling work, school, family, just life, right? And you absolutely believe prayer is important. But if you're being really honest, where does it actually land on that priority list? For so many of us, it gets shoved right to the bottom. So we have to ask, why does that keep happening? And that struggle right there, it creates this weird paradox in our lives. We say we value prayer, but our actions, they often tell a completely different story. To really get why, let's just break down how we usually react when a real problem pops up. So, a challenge hits. Boom. What's our first instinct? We try to take control. We jump on Google looking for a strategy, a 7-step plan. We try to game it out, calculate the odds. We text a friend, get their opinion. We gather up all the human wisdom we can find. And then, maybe, just maybe, after we've tried everything else and we're totally exhausted, we think, oh yeah, I should probably pray about this. Prayer becomes the last-ditch effort, not the first response.
But what if this modern, self-reliant way of doing things is missing the point entirely? Let's just hit the rewind button for a second and look at the early church. I mean, these people faced incredible life-or-death situations, but their first move was radically different from ours. They were tapping into something else, a shared source of strength.
I mean, look at this. This comparison really just lays it all out. It shows the fundamental difference in their whole operating system. When we face a problem, our first move is to find a method. Their first move was to pray. When we get busy, we use it as an excuse not to pray. For them, being busy was the very reason they needed to pray more. See, prayer wasn't an afterthought. It was their starting line for literally everything.
And, this wasn't some casual thing they just squeezed in when they had a free moment. The text says they devoted themselves to it. That word, it implies discipline, passion, a real commitment. They didn't fit prayer into their schedule. They built their schedule around prayer. It was a core practice, absolutely essential to who they were.
So what was their secret? What did they get that we so often miss? Well, it all starts with a much, much bigger idea of what prayer is actually for. You see, a lot of us have accidentally shrunk prayer down and put it into this tiny little box. If we're being totally honest, this is often how we see prayer, right? It's my personal hotline to God to ask for the things I need or want. It's basically a spiritual wish list. My health, my job, my problems. And look, those things are important and we should absolutely bring them to God. But that's not the whole picture. It's not even close. Because prayer isn't just about my personal to-do list for God. For the early church, it was so much bigger than that. It wasn't just a private transaction. It was the very breath of their community. It was their lifeblood, their engine, the clearest sign that they were spiritually alive and plugged into their power source. And this right here, this just says it all. Look at the scale of what they were praying for. Their focus was always outward and upward. They were praying for God's kingdom to come on earth, for their nation, for other believers all over the world, especially the ones who were suffering. They prayed for the gospel to spread, not just for their own personal comfort. Their prayers were huge because they believed they were talking to a huge God. And this, right here, brings us to the most important part of this whole conversation. It's the big shift in perspective that can change everything. So you ready to see how we go from a prayer life that feels isolated to something way, way more powerful? The big idea is this. Prayer was never meant to be a lonely battle that you have to fight all by yourself. It was designed from the beginning to be a union of faith, people standing together, believing together, and seeking God together. There's this unique, incredible power that gets unlocked when we stop just praying for each other and actually start praying with each other. So here's how that power actually builds and flows. It starts with individual prayer. That's step 1, and it's absolutely crucial. But the power multiplies when we move to step 2, when we start praying together. And that focus on community is what opens the door to step 3, where God's power is really unleashed, not just in one person's life, but through the entire community.
Okay, so this all leads to a massive question we have to ask ourselves, not just as individuals, but as communities, as churches. It's a real gut check moment for our spiritual health. It's like we got to check our collective pulse.
Think about it like this. Praying together is the main artery. It's the primary channel where God's power and life flow into the heart of a community. Without it, We can look super busy on the outside. We can have all the programs and events in the world, but be spiritually starving on the inside.
So as we wrap this up, the most important question I want to leave you with isn't just if you're praying. The real question, the one that could change everything, is this. Who are you praying with? Who are you linking arms with in faith? Because finding that union, that community, well, that might just be the key to unlocking a level of power and connection that you've been missing all along.